Okay, this is at Love Clark, and this is Satan's Counterfeit Christianity, and we're going to continue where we left off. I got cut off prematurely because I ran out of memory, okay? So I'm going to backtrack a little bit where we were last, and we were talking about how all the cultures and different religions got spread through Nimrod, basically the mother and child, and all the little stories and how they mixed it all up. Anyway, from Egypt came the ideas of a divine trinity and a personal immortality of reward and punishment. From Egypt, the adoration of the mother and child, and the mystic theosophy that made Neoplatonism and Gnosticism and obscured the Christian creed. There, too, Christian monasticism would find its exemplars and its source. From Phrygia came the worship of the Great Mother. From Syria, the resurrection drama of Adonis. From Thrace, perhaps the cult of Dionysus, the dying and saving god. The Mithric ritual so closely resembled the Eucharist, sacrifice of the Mass, that Christian fathers charged the devil with inventing these similarities to mislead frail minds. Christianity was the last great creation of the ancient pagan world. Did you hear that, guys? Christianity was the last great creation of the ancient pagan world. The Eucharist was a conception long sanctified by time. The pagan mind needed no schooling to receive it. By embodying the mystery of the Mass, Christianity became the last and greatest of the mystery religions. The Story of Civilization, Volume 5. Paul Johnson is one of the many highly respected historians who openly acknowledge that the biblical seventh-day Sabbath observed by Christ and the original apostles was changed. Many Christians did not make a clear distinction between this sun cult and their own. They referred to Christ driving his chariot across the sky. They held their services on Sunday, knelt towards the east, and had their nativity feast on December 25th, the birthday of the sun at the winter solstice. During the later pagan revival under Emperor Julian, many Christians found it easy to apostatize because of this confusion. The bishop of Troy told Julian he had always prayed secretly to the sun. Constantine never abandoned sun worship and kept the sun on his cross. He made Sunday into a day of rest. A History of Christianity. Got the book. What happened after Constantine? The widely read mainstream religious author Jesse Lyman Herbert explains. Excuse me, my mouth's a little dry. Medication. The forms and ceremonies of paganism gradually crept into the worship. Let's repeat that. The forms and ceremonies of paganism gradually crept into the worship. Some of the old heathen feasts became church festivals with change of name and of worship. About 405 AD, images of saints and martyrs began to appear in the churches, at first as memorials, then in succession, revered, adored, and worshipped. The adoration of the Virgin Mary was substituted for the worship of Venus and Diana. The Lord's Supper became a sacrifice in place of a memorial, and the elder evolved from a preacher into a priest. The church and the state became one when Christianity was adopted as the religion of the empire, and out of the unnatural union arose two evils, one in the eastern, the other in the western provinces. In the east, the state dominated the church until it lost all energy in uplifting life. In the west, Rome, as we shall see, the church gradually assert power over the state, and the result was not Christianity, but a more or less corrupt hierarchy controlling the nations of Europe, making the church mainly a political machine. The story of Christian church. A modern Babylon created. So where does all this lead? We have just read Herbert's statement that the professing Christian church of the Middle Ages was mainly a political machine. It was saturated with pagan concepts, doctrines, and practices. Did the leaders of the Protestant Reformation really bring the professing Christian church back on track to the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints, Jude 3, back to the true Christianity of Jesus and the original apostles? Although sincere, the Protestant reformers carried over most of the anti-law, anti-obedience attitudes they had come to adopt in their rebellion against Mother Rome. Like Rome, they were still involved in a pagan. Like Rome, they were still involved in a paganized system of false doctrines, pagan holy days, and false concepts of God, which God himself describes in Revelation 17:4-5. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, adored with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations, and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon, the Great, the mother of harlots, and the abominations of the earth. With this form of quote-unquote Christianity as the state religion, masses of former pagans converted. Many did so out of convenience rather than conviction, and kept their old beliefs privately. Others came to the new syncretic faith uneducated in its beliefs and able to receive only the most basic instruction. Sad. This is the truth Christians don't want to believe when you tell them. When you tell them the facts, they say, well, that doesn't matter. Babylon is a system of confusion. The formation of the Roman Catholic Church and then the late appearance of dozens of daughter churches has certainly brought about a spiritual malaise of conflicting denominations, doctrines, creeds, and practices, all supposedly Christian. Now let's go back again. The formation of the Roman Catholic Church and then the later appearances of dozens of daughter churches has certainly brought about a spiritual malaise of conflicting denominations, doctrines, creeds, and practices, all supposedly quote-unquote Christian, yet none of them corresponds remotely to the Christianity that the original apostles in the early Church of God followed for decades after the death of Jesus of Nazareth. They all have retained dozens of pagan ideas and practices that would have been utterly foreign to the early church. Satan has indeed done a masterful job of creating a counterfeit Christianity. Although Alexander Hillsop appears to have remained a Protestant until his death, he carefully pointed out, with much historical documentation, that the modern Roman Catholic Church is a continuation of the ancient Babylonish mystery system, and that its religious festivals and most of its practices were drawn directly from the Babylonian religion and its priesthood. Hillsop partially makes the connection with the daughter churches that have come out of Rome, but he was evidently blinded to the full meaning of what has happened to modern Christianity. Near the beginning of the Two Babylons, Hillsop lays out the basic thesis that he goes on to document in full. It has been known all along that popery has baptized paganism, but God is now making it manifest that the paganism which Rome has baptized is, in all its essential elements, the very paganism which prevailed in the ancient literal Babylon when Jehovah opened before Cyrus the two-leafed gates of brass and cut in sunder the bars of iron. Her judgment is now evidently hastening on, and just as it approaches, the providence of God, conspiring with the word of God, by light pouring in from all quarters, makes it more and more evident that Rome is in very deed the Babylon of the Apocalypse, that the essential character of her system, the grand objects of her worship, her festivals, her doctrine and discipline, her rites and ceremonies, her priesthood and their orders, have all been derived from ancient Babylon, and finally, that the Pope himself is truly and properly the lineal representative of Belshazzar. In the warfare that has been waged against the domineering pretensions of Rome, it has too often been counted enough merely to meet and set aside her presumptuous boast that she is the mother and mistress of all churches, the one Catholic Church, out of whose pale there is no salvation. If ever there was excuse for such a mode of dealing with her, that excuse will hold no longer. If the position I have laid down can be maintained, she must be stripped of the name of a Christian church altogether, for it was a church of Christ that was convened on that night when the pontiff king of Babylon, in the midst of his thousands of lords, praised the gods of gold and of silver and of wood and of stone, Daniel 5:4. Then the Church of Rome is entitled to the name of a Christian church, but not otherwise. This too some no doubt will appear a very startling position, but it is one position which it is the object of this work to establish, and let the reader judge for himself whether I do not bring ample evidence to substantiate my position. Let me read that again for you guys. Then the Church of Rome is entitled to the name of a Christian church, but not otherwise. This to some, no doubt, will appear a very startling position, but it is one which it is the object of the work to establish, and let the reader judge for himself whether I do not bring ample evidence to substantiate my position. Alright, we're going to continue on in a minute because I'm running up to the 15. So, this is Satan's Counterfeit Christianity, and we're leaving off where we're learning about basically the real who's who and who's who in the Catholic Church and Christianity. Okay, so yes, Counterfeit Christianity. Satan's Counterfeit.